Makakwa, whenever you are ready, you can call the meeting to order.
It's 5:33 and calling the City of Lawrence Sustainability Advisory Board meeting to order. And according to Jasmine, we have quorum, so we can hold the meeting and vote on stuff. I'm going to do as little talking as possible, so I'm going to let Jasmine and Kara kind of take over, if that's okay.
Okay, sounds good. So the first thing up on the agenda is just an overview of the virtual meeting procedures. So I will speak to that. So my name is Jasmine Moore. I'm the Sustainability Director. I'll be facilitating the Zoom portion of the meeting. This is being broadcast live on the city's YouTube channel and the public access channel 25. During the meeting, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon found in the lower left-hand side of the Zoom menu right next to the video icon. And when you're muted, a red line will appear over that icon. And muting your microphone will just make sure that everyone can hear. And you'll have to remember to unmute if and when you would like to speak. In some cases, I may mute or unmute people as needed. And each time you speak, if you would please remember to state your name for the benefit of those that are listening remotely. And in that same area, you can also turn your camera off or on by clicking on the video icon. And for the purposes of this public meeting, if you are able to keep your video on during the public meeting if you are a board member. If you're here for public comment, feel free to turn your video off until you're ready to make public comment. And if you're participating by phone, you can press *6 to unmute or mute yourself. And you can also just use the mute feature on your phone. So let's see. You can look at speaker view or gallery view. I would suggest gallery view in Zoom so that you can see everyone. And all motions will need to be stated clearly, and after a motion is made and seconded, the chair will call on board members individually, or staff in this case, if Makakwa is not ready, and I think Kira's on here now. We'll call on board members individually to provide their vote. And we have several people who have expressed interest in providing public comment today on one or more items. So when we get to the public comment, if you would just Makakwa or Kira, just check in with me to see if there's anyone who would like to speak. Usually no one shows up here, but I'll let you know if someone shows up in person as well. And I just want to remind everyone to mute yourself when you are not speaking. So with that, the next item is to approve the February 2021 Sustainability Advisory Board minutes. And it will be helpful if someone could take a look at those and see if there is a motion.
I make a motion to approve the minutes. This is Kay.
This is Jackie. I second.
Okay, this is Jasmine. Motion by Kay, a second by Jackie. Is there any discussion on this item? Okay. So we will do a roll call vote.
Jackie, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Deb? That looked like an aye.
Aye.
I was trying to read your lips. Okay, that was an
Many
aye.
places.
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
And Lily?
Aye.
And Kira?
Kira, I know you're on the phone. You may have to press *6 to unmute yourself. Or maybe not.
Aye. Sorry.
There he is. Okay. Great. All All right, so that motion passes. The next agenda item is the goal setting, part 2. So last month, you all started a discussion around what you would like your priorities to be and what your focus will be for the rest of this year. And in the meantime, you were asked to submit your top 4 priorities and identify how those aligned with the city's strategic plan and those 5 sustainability principles that the City Commission adopted about a month ago. So that information is in the agenda packet along with written public comment that was submitted for this item. I will let you know that the written public comment has been updated a couple times today. So if you read it earlier, I would suggest that you take a look at it again because there's a few more comments that were added. And just looking, Makakwa, do you want me to talk through this part with the board?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So let me just open this up. I'm going to attempt to share my screen.
Now, we all understand as a board, right, that our role is to advise to the city commission that we don't actually, initiate actions, but we advise the city commission to start.
So this is Jasmine Moore. I just wanted to elaborate on that. The purpose of this board is to advise the city commission regarding issues affecting sustainability, environmental protection, waste reduction, recycling, energy conservation, and natural resource conservation, environmental protection. So I think I put that in there twice by accident. And so, yeah, this just a reminder, your role is to provide advice to the city commission and policy direction. And that's where, that connection to the city's strategic plan is really important. Because if it's not connected to that, then the city commission will have a hard time saying yes to recommendations that come out of this board. In the past, some boards had kind of been stuck in the education role or recommending programs that be adopted. And the role of an advisory board is really to look at that high-level policy to direct the actions of staff. So that high-level policy will have implications for how staff spends their time on programming and education outreach, those types of things. So I'm sharing the priorities that were developed by you all. This was just a survey that you all filled out. So each line has a different response to it. That's also linked in the agenda. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can see people's faces as well. But if it would be helpful for me to reshare this or anything else, let me know. So I think we could start by just getting some reactions to the responses that you saw from your fellow board members. Because you just submitted them individually. So anybody have some initial reactions to what you saw?
Hi, this is Kay Johnson. I would just like to comment that they're all really good. And it shows that we've got a lot of different, diverse ideas. So it looks like we're going to have to try to figure out how to pare some of these down. But they're fantastic, I think.
This is Ben Sykes. I want to, I agree with what you said, Kay. I also was impressed that although they may be in different spots and not articulated in the same way, there was some overlap. For example, like things like food trees in one place and sustainable gardens or things like that in another place, or finding ways to deal with kind of the socioeconomic aspects of them, I think were reiterated a few times. So maybe those that we have multiple support for, articulate in different ways, can help educate exactly what you're saying, how we find those priorities and pathways.
This is Jackie. I noticed some overlap too with a couple different topics that showed up on the list. I also noticed that some goals were very specific while some goals were very broad. And then one of the other things that I noticed is that some of the goals are already underway or have been done by the city. So that might be a way to start paring down some options.
This is Makakwa, and I feel like the community engagement piece shouldn't be specific goals, and it's not really something that we advise the city commission on. It's just something that we should already be doing, and it's definitely something I've been pushing for at every step of the way. I don't understand why it's taking so long, but I mean, that's something that I feel like goes hand in hand as we're pursuing these goals. And I really like the idea of reviewing the codes for maximum conservation.
This has been Sykes. Jasmine, I just have a quick question. I was trying to do it myself, but did you have a feeling for which of the sustainability principles or the strategic plan elements seem to resonate the most in at least these priorities?
This is Jasmine, Sustainability Director. It seemed like, well, one thing that I noticed is that most of these covered at least, most of them had at least two elements of the strategic plan and multiple elements of those 5 sustainability principles, which I think one interpretation is that that's indicative of what sustainability is. It's looking at systems and how they interact with each other. And so it's not necessarily a surprise that there would be multiple connections to elements of the strategic plan. It seemed like, I mean, I don't know, as soon as I start to say one of them shows up more, then I look at the rest and they show up as well. So it doesn't, there's not, one that sticks out as it seems like that's a theme that everybody was connecting to. The theme to me was that there was usually more than one element of the strategic plan that it connected to, and multiple elements of those 5 sustainability principles. Any other reactions from board members on what you saw for responses here? And I know there were a couple of people that didn't have a chance to fill out the survey before today. So if you didn't have a chance to do that and want to share some things that maybe you didn't see reflected here, but that you would elevate as a policy priority, now would be a good time to talk more about that. Okay, hearing none, This would be, there's a couple different pieces of this agenda. This one that we're on now is to review the priorities that were submitted by board members. The next piece is to decide the priority areas. So before we move on to that deciding priority areas, now would be an appropriate time to take public comment on this item 1 related to reviewing the priority areas submitted by the board members. So Makakwa, does that sound good to you?
That would be a great idea, yeah, because I think that would help us to make better decisions about what we should focus on.
Okay. So this is Jasmine, Sustainability Director. If you are a member of the public and you'd like to give public comment on this item, I would ask you to turn on your camera if it's available, or an alternative is to raise your hand in the Zoom room, which you can do by looking at the participant list and then clicking on. There should be a little raise your hand. I see one raised so far. So let's go with Chris Flowers first.
Hi, this is Chris Flowers, and I'm just wondering what's the unmistakable identity? Like, that just seems very open, like, because, I mean, like, what if you did, that just encompasses so much. Like, we could do something that's bad for the environment, but it would be, if it's unique, wouldn't that be unmistakably like an identity? I'm just having problems. Like I'm just wondering, is it defined what that unmistakable identity is? Because it just seems like a buzzword, and like some of this stuff is like, and also like strong, welcoming neighborhoods. Like, well, who defines what welcoming is? So I guess my main problem is just the unmistakable identity, unless we're defining what unmistakable is, because it's just too vague in my opinion. Thank you.
Jasmine Moore, Sustainability Director. Just to, sorry, I was just gonna let someone in, and then just as a quick response to that, these terms are directly from the Lawrence Strategic Plan, and that can be found on the Lawrence website, and it gives a little more detail to what each of those areas mean, and staff is in the process of digging into those even further to identify, the key performance indicators for each of those and some action steps. So next up, I saw Courtney Masterson.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thanks everyone for having me. I think this is the appropriate time, and please tell me if I'm doing the wrong thing, to discuss some of the public comments submitted. I will specifically discuss my own, but you'll see a recurring theme across many of your public comments on native plants and their role in our weed ordinance. I will pull up my notes. I'm not going to screen share. That would be unnecessarily complicated. My notes are included in Jasmine's attachments to your agenda. I realize that the Sustainability Advisory Board's role is to provide guidance to the City Commission, and I just ask that the board review and discuss the city's weed ordinance, especially as it pertains to the inclusion of over 20 species native to northeastern Kansas, and excludes notably many species that threaten our natural areas. It also restricts plantings to a specific height, defined as 12 inches, which would exclude many of our native plants and native plantings in the city. Many of you are familiar with my work to protect native plants and landscapes in Lawrence and many of our neighboring municipalities. So I have a vested interest in this, obviously, but I think native plants serve an important role in protecting Lawrence and other developed areas. And I'd be interested in discussing this further with the Sustainability Advisory Board or the City Commission where appropriate. And thank you very much for thinking on this for all of us. We appreciate you.
This is Makakwa. If I remember correctly, it's not really the city that determines those, but it's the county, and then they're going off of state definitions and state regulations. So it wouldn't necessarily be a policy, but maybe like suggesting city commission, write a letter about that to the state and the county.
Right. If there's time for a quick response, I would just say I agree that the feedback from the Parks Department has been that they modeled their ordinance off of the state level recommendations, which is interesting because they contain quite a few major spelling errors and misnomers for plants. So I haven't had a chance to dig through the state level ordinance myself, but I agree with you that we should be eventually looking at a state level change. But there are many examples of state ordinances or city ordinances, to model our work off of, including many within Kansas. So I think that the city may play an important role in providing protections for native plants that aren't provided at a state level. But I think that's a really good point, that this is a broader problem than just Lawrence.
This is Makakwa. I'm just wondering, Jasmine, if we could research that and whether we could have our own city ordinance, or do we have to align with county and state definitions of, species of plants?
This is Jasmine Moore, Sustainability Director. This actually was a topic that came up at the Parks and Rec Advisory Board meeting a couple days ago. And there is some information in our current ordinances that includes the state noxious weed guidelines, but it also goes beyond that to list a lot more things. And so there are some things that we can do at the local level and explore further in the discussion at the Parks and Rec Board meeting. There was, it's actually under a tree section of the ordinance is noxious weeds, and then there's a whole long list of things that are prohibited. And as was mentioned earlier, it's really concentrated on height of plants and in thinking about like mitigation or anything like that. It's the strategy is to cut it all down, not necessarily remove it. So I think there's definitely some research that we can do and get on the staff side to get a better sense of what's currently in the ordinance, how does that align with our strategic plan, and some of the other things that Parks and Rec is trying to do. They received a presentation about some pollinator habitat and a project that they're working on. And one of the species that was listed in our noxious weed ordinance was milkweed. And so obviously that's in conflict with, what we're trying to do in terms of promoting pollinators and especially butterflies. So there's some things that are policy level at the city level. There's some things that are at the state level, some things that are at the county level.
This is Makakwa. Do we know if the Parks and Rec is submitting like ordinance changes or policy changes, or is that something we can do, or do we just maybe support what Parks and Rec is doing?
This is Jasmine, Sustainability Director. They did not take action at their Monday meeting to do more on this. I think staff was going to look into some things. One of the things that could be a point of consideration is if this is something that's of interest to the Sustainability Advisory Board and the Parks Board, that might be an opportunity to work together on a policy recommendation.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Mm-hmm.
Jasmine, I don't know if we can reply to all or to everyone, but I did put those links in. It looks like it just went to you.
Okay.
When I put that in the chat, but I did put the ordinance, which I don't understand why the weeds list is under trees, but Anyway, I also put the state link for the state designated noxious weeds, and there's only like 12.
Okay.
And they're not really the list that's listed in that long list that the city of Lawrence has.
Okay, I will put that in the chat to everyone, and then I'll include it in the notes as well. Okay, are we ready for the next public comment? Okay, Don Hawkins.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can get my headset to work. I have 4 comments. So I'll try to make it quick. Just quickly, not sure why the comments are locked down. And I encourage them to be opened back up because I think it's a great way to get citizen input without disrupting the meeting. Because you can save that chat and, share that and there's so little time here. So anyway, I encourage you to open the comments back up to everyone. And then on the education and community engagement, I think that's really important to keep educating the public about, because there's a lot of change coming. But I'm wondering how the board can be more efficient that really should be, kind of city should be pulling that weight. So could you maybe ask for more funding for Jasmine's team or something like that? Because I've seen other groups get really bogged down with these efforts. And this, you guys have a lot to do. So I'm wondering how you can kind of maybe make a goal, make it a sort of a mission statement to give to the city commission or for Jasmine to share. I'm not sure how that works, but and then to maybe go to the commission and ask for more funding for her team, and maybe Jasmine can speak to that. But 2 things that I don't see clearly identified in your number ones here. I really, like I've said before, I think that clean water is such an issue. Clean water is kind of the final frontier, and the board, that's pretty kind of maybe ominous topic, but maybe just examine what are the threats and that might help you gain focus throughout the year of what that means as far as how does the board address this. But I encourage you to keep clean water as a high priority. And then secondly, I think it's really important for this group to help find ways to implement the new city mandate to go to, also free, because there's a lot of hurdles there. And this board, I think, was the initiator of that. I kind of started coming to the meetings, I think, after that, but I did fully support it and went to those commission meetings and was very happy to see that pass. But there's a lot of, aspects of that are, pretty, maybe even insurmountable. But so identifying the barriers there, legislative barriers, as we're seeing right now, and also citizen assistance. It's, one thing to have the city moving towards this all electric concept for the infrastructure. But once we get to the point where we're asking citizens to make this move, how is that even? I have a small rental property in town and recently got an HVAC bid to and explored ways to become all electric, heat pump, mini splits, etc. And the cost associated with electrical upgrades and the HVAC guy I talked to said that is a big barrier. How do we get sufficient electrical upgrades to homes? So these are just some things that, subtopics is part of that. But I think that, supporting the city and educating yourselves, condensing information to pass on, whatever, that this really needs to be a high priority. So clean water and then implementation of this, the city's mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. All right, next up we have Michael Allman.
Hi, good evening. Michael Allman here. reflecting back on what Courtney Masterson was just talking about, I could provide you with quite a bit of information. Sustainability Action Network, the Sierra Club Wakarusa Group, Lettuce, the Lawrence Eco Teams United in Sustainability. All of us have been following for a year now the Kansas Department of Agriculture revision of their regulations about noxious weeds. Somebody mentioned there are 12 noxious, I think Makakwa mentioned there are 12. That's true for the state level. And these are agricultural noxious weeds. But in the state regulations, every county is supposed to enforce the state regulations. And there's a county weed supervisor in every county, including Douglas County. That person has total control over all weed management in Douglas County. However, the county weed managers also have interlocal agreements that the county and the city of Lawrence, for example, have an agreement so that within the city limits, the city enforces it, not the county. It's very complicated. It's not Parks and Recreation either. Within the city, it's the Code Enforcement Division of the Planning Department. In the Code Enforcement Division, they enforce building codes, fire codes, blight codes, weeds. I mean, vegetation is all bunched together with these problems like fire and blight. And it's their bias. There's a section in the current city weed ordinance, and the city weed ordinance is expanded from the state regulations because the city has control within the city. And they've expanded it, like Courtney mentioned, and she talks in her letter, she talks about dog bane and the benefits. And she also mentioned that they have a lot of mistakes. That's one of them. They call it dog bone. And it's been dog bone for 25 years. I've been fighting this weed ordinance for 25 years, and other people have been too. There's a natural landscaping provision that says you can grow anything to its native natural height and width. That sounds great, except they don't honor it. If a neighbor complains, the neighbor carries more weight. You have to prove somehow that you're not offending your neighbors. Otherwise, you have to mow it down. You know, they are very hard-nosed about this, and that's a big problem. So the local weed ordinance definitely needs to be rewritten. A member of the Wakarusa Sierra Club was the latest victim. Last summer, they got all over her, and they said, well, maybe it's time to rewrite this ordinance. Aha, let's keep that in mind. They realize they have a problem because people like Courtney and y'all and the various groups I mentioned, we're all kind of coming up to the surface now and realizing maybe this is the time really to attack it. And I really think it is. I have a request with the county to get a copy of that interlocal agreement, just what the county would allow the city to do. And when I learn more about that, I can pass that information on. So let's all of us somehow keep in touch, and particularly with the biological, oh yeah, the city is very schizophrenic also. They're not interested in eradicating amber honeysuckle. Sustainability Action Network put a request in the capital improvement plan 2 or 3 years ago for $1 million that they should spend to eradicate amber honeysuckle. No, they're not interested in doing that. What they do, they spray a lot of herbicides all over the place. And then at the Parks and Recreation Board, they were talking about a cooperative agreement with the Biological Survey, which is great what they're doing for a pollinator habitat. And they want the city to provide sites for pollinator habitats. So on one hand, the city says, yeah, we like pollinator habitats. On the other hand, they won't let individuals in our own yards grow pollinator plants without being called weeds. So this really has to be dealt with. very much. And I appreciate everybody else talking about it. And I think maybe we can get somewhere now. Thank you.
Hey, can I just say something real quick? This is Kira.
Go ahead, Kara.
I am super interested in this, Michael and Courtney. I took out my lawn a few years ago and put in native drought-resistant perennial ground covers and native perennial drought-resistant cottage flowers. And it looks really, really pretty in the summer. But I get like a letter once a month from a neighbor who's complained about me, and then the city comes out and then they go, okay, it looks pretty, it's not weeds. And, you know, that's fine because I'm, you know, in the fight for life. But somebody who maybe is not as fine, kind of fighting back, is going to get discouraged. I really think we need to codify this. I don't think the city has any business having like unused lawns on any public grounds. I think if kids or sports are not using it, we need to get in native drought resistant ground covers and flowers everywhere. And we really need to encourage people to put in climate resilient lawns, or not lawns, climate resilient yards. I just don't think anybody has business growing lawns in this day and age if they're not actively using it. So this is a wonderful subject, Courtney. And hey, Courtney, my email is gardenpunk@protonmail.com. Would you email me so we can talk more about this?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll do that. Thank you,
All right.
Kira. I appreciate your support.
This is Makakwa. I'm also interested in having this as a priority as well. Milkweed is a culturally relevant plant to a lot of tribes in Kansas. And I know it's a big problem on reservations where they're trying to protect their milkweed plants. And then within a certain distance from the road, the county comes out and mows all of that down and essentially gets rid of the milkweed plants before the tribe can harvest it to use it for their own purposes. And so yeah, that's a problem for tribes too. It's not just in Lawrence that that's a problem, but it's actually a problem throughout the state. And so this is definitely something that maybe we can work out within our city ordinance that might help other counties or other cities also update their codes.
This is Jasmine, Sustainability Director.
I know there were a couple other people that were members of the public. If you are interested in providing public comment, please raise your hand in the Zoom feature or turn on your camera, and so that we can make sure that you have an opportunity to participate.
Jasmine, this has been Sykes. Other people on here may know already, but so as not to use a lot more time, I'd like to learn about why the city of Lawrence's weed list is so much more extensive than what the state has. There's so many more species on there than what seems to be handed down by the hierarchical levels of government. So, if we're thinking about rewriting the code, which I am also in support of, we should probably understand why that list was made more extensive in the first place, if people know, and that may be the antagonism that we would run into in terms of trying to rewrite the code.
Hi, Jasmine. This is Lily. Yeah, I would like to know more information on who exactly is writing these ordinances, like the system of how we can push back, of what sort of influence we would have, of why it's so extensive even upon the state, and what sort of influence we could have and how we would go about influencing that, because I think that is a very important topic. This kind of goes into one of the topics that I was very interested in, along with natural plants being planted throughout the city, as well as maintaining and cutting down a lot of the weeds that the city has throughout. I noticed a significant difference in even just our walk paths and stuff in our neighborhood during COVID, when they were not mowing as often, and there was a lot of native plants that were being allowed to grow to their full height. And it was a remarkable difference in the landscape. And so it would be interesting to know a bit more detail into how this is, how the city goes about planning these ordinances.
I don't know if it would, this is Kira. I don't know if it would influence the city's decision or not. It's a real pain in the butt to convert lawn into, you know, the ground covers and the cottage flowers. But once it's established, the work is so minimal. It would save the city a lot of money with mowing and with lawn products, which, you know, we don't want them to be using that anyway. And again, if you do it right, they're really pretty. And there's all kinds of like xeriscaping that can go in and have almost minimal maintenance. And again, it would save the city, which talks about money all the time, would save them a lot of money. So, all right, thanks.
This is Makakwa, and I would suggest that maybe, you know, the climate change subcommittee could work with Courtney and whoever else to meet as often as possible to tackle this so that we don't have to wait till the next Sustainability Advisory Board meeting. But, you know, you could inform us and educate us about these weeds, and we can work with Jasmine to find out some of the other questions that we have. But this is definitely something that the climate change subcommittee would be interested in taking up. And I'm pretty sure Kira agrees with me.
I'm always happy to help.
Do we have a subcommittee?
Yes, we do.
Well, we didn't have a meeting last, we were supposed to have a meeting on Friday the week ago. And since we've been discussing the priorities, the subcommittees kind of went away.
This is Deb Ford. My understanding is that these priorities, we're going to establish which ones we're going to tackle and form subcommittees around. Is that correct, Jasmine?
This is Jasmine, Sustainability Director. So the idea is that once you all decide what your priorities are, then the subcommittees can help support moving those priorities forward. And so it sounds like there is conversation around this noxious weeds ordinance as a possible priority. If you all decide that that's a priority, then you could decide, is that something that deserves its own subcommittee, or does it fit within a different structure that you would like to move forward? I would encourage you to think about how there's only 9 more meetings left for this year. So as you think about what you want to work on, keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that we have a climate action plan that is moving forward, slower than what everyone wants, but we're trying to move that forward as well. So keep that in mind. And as I mentioned before, there may be some priorities that have some overlap with the priorities of other advisory boards. That may be an opportunity for working with another advisory board to create a subcommittee between the boards to strengthen your recommendation to the City Commission. Also, I would ask you to consider that if, you know, there's a lot of, to Kay's point earlier, there's a wide variety of topics that were submitted by you all. And if you try to tackle all of that, it will be very exhausting for all of you. So I'd encourage you to think about, you know, what are your top priorities and limit that so that you can really focus your energy on moving a few forward rather than trying to move 10 forward. So with that, I don't see anyone else that wanted to provide public comment on this item. And so I think it's appropriate to move into the next part of the conversation, which is deciding what your priorities are for the remainder of this year, and then starting to structure the subcommittees to advance those priorities forward. I'm just going to look to Makakwa for an indication that that is the direction you want to go.
This is Makakwa, and I think that deciding as a board what priorities. I'm curious how many priorities we're looking at as a board that's realistic about us working on.
I think that's something we should probably discuss before we start paring down so that we kind of have a goal toward the goal. I personally think 3 or 4 would be doable, given that we have 10 board members and in the past people have taken on 1 or 2 of the goals at a time.
This is Makakwa. I was also thinking maybe 4 would be realistic for us. And then, if we feel like we've accomplished as much as we could around those 4, then obviously we can tackle more at a later date or add to the list. So then I guess now would be the time to hear from the board members what priorities each of you are interested in and something that maybe you would want to work on as well.
This is Jackie. I'd like to kind of sell one that I submitted. It's actually the very first one that's listed on the priorities, and I'll just read it out really quickly. It says expanding all facets of the weatherization grant program. So that would be everything from size to the qualification requirements, its visibility in the community, which weatherization strategies are used, things like that. And then to Dawn's point, even potentially wrapping up the electrical upgrades to achieve electrification, those kinds of ideas. This is a really timely idea. I actually already reached out to the team within the city who works on this project, and they are coming to a natural place in the project where they are going to kind of redo the whole thing. So it's actually a grant program that is funded by HUD. So it's a federal program. Well, it's federally funded, but the city is able to determine a lot of the pieces. So there are like income requirements that are federally mandated and regulated, but a lot of the actual weatherization projects, the city can decide what kinds they want to include in that, what they think would be possible for them to implement. So the last change to that program I heard was before 2008. So I don't even know how old it is beyond that. There were only 3 things included in it previously, which was attic insulation, entry door weather stripping, and storm windows. And there was no reason given to me other than the person who's been on the team the longest. It was just that way when she joined. So what they're looking for is a new program that is both effective and measurable. And I think that SAB could weigh in with a lot of ideas on this in a relatively short time frame. They're looking to hire someone in the spring to help redo this project and all of the things that they'll be offering. And I think that would be one really good way for us to start meeting more of our renewable energy goals. Well, that and our greenhouse gas emissions reductions goals through a program that already exists. Oftentimes expanding programs that already exist is easier than implementing new ones. So yeah, that's my pitch. That's what I would really like to work on in the short term.
This is Makakwa. Jackie, do you see this fitting under the already existing energy subcommittee?
I'm not sure. My feeling about subcommittees in general right now is that I would like to wipe that slate clean and figure out what our priorities are, individual goals. And then from there, we could, if any of them are similar, I guess we could wrap them up into a similar group. but I think it would be kind of cool if we all agree on what the individual goals are and then have like one or two that we sign up for. And then those are just each individual project groups. That's my opinion on it, but obviously others are trying to weigh in on that too. I haven't heard much about that structure, people's opinions on that structure.
This is Makakwa. I think that's a good point that you bring up, whether this subcommittee structure is working or it's successful, or we need to look at another structure that might be more effective. Anybody else, any other board members want to pitch their priority?
This is Kay Johnson. Because I was on that climate subcommittee, in my suggestion for my first priority would be that we continue to assist in the updating of that, because the city of Lawrence, has identified that and put funding toward that. But unless we have a priority toward that, we're not going to have input except as individuals. At least that's my understanding of that. Is that correct, Jasmine?
Jasmine Moore, Sustainability Director.
There are two things. One, the Climate Action Planning Subcommittee participated last year by kind of setting some higher level guiding values for the plan development. So staff has integrated those into our approach. So that's one way that group has had input so far. We are working on rolling out some of the more public engagement efforts this spring. And so, of course, you all would have input, as Kay mentioned, as individuals. And I think that was one of the challenges of the Climate Action Subcommittee, is really defining what role that group wanted to play in the development of the plan itself. There will be lots of opportunities for input. It's just a matter of at what level you want to give input. So I think that's a topic of discussion for that Climate Action Planning Subcommittee, if that continues to be a priority for this group.
And so for that reason, I was the one that went ahead and put in under my priority one to basically reiterate a climate action adaptation plan. So I put that was my number one, because I really feel like we still want to have some direct input as a group, not as just as individuals.
This is Makakwa. I agree, Kay. I think we were doing some great work, and I think that the feeling from the subcommittee was that we wanted to have an active part of advising this plan. And so I think I agree, we should continue that work.
This is Ben Sykes. First of all, I guess I would agree with the number that you guys are thinking about. Like if we have 9 meetings left and there are 10 of us, 3 to 4 or 4 sounds reasonable to me. One thing that struck me in looking at the priorities was something that Jackie raised about the scale of them, right? Some are, doable, like we know, like we can make our priorities, or rewriting what the sustainability committee is supposed to be about or something, right? Like there were some that were very specific and seem doable on shorter time frames. And there are others that are much more broad. And I guess I would just advocate, I certainly have my own priorities and interests, but I would advocate that perhaps we think about the scale of those as we decide on our priorities. So we don't have like 3 that are all massive or even 3 that are all very narrow in scope, right? That we have some that are across the different ones, so we can feel that we're getting somewhere on the tractable ones, but that we're also working to something that may not be completed in 9 more meetings, right? And it sounds like, the weatherization is maybe more tractable, but that the plan is going in place for this larger climate advisory that's been going on for a while. So
This is Makakwa, and I think that would be an argument for the subcommittee structure, because we were having subcommittees meet outside of the SAB meetings and then reporting back to the larger SAB board at large and kind of educating us. So then that whoever was on that subcommittee would take up that work, be informed, develop a recommendation, and then advise the rest of the board, inform them, and then, vote on making that recommendation to the city commission. So that would be one argument for the subcommittee structure, if that's what the board feels like we should do. Anybody else have any suggestions, priorities?
I'm going to say one more thing. This is Ben Sykes. Sorry. One of the things that raises with me with the weed stuff, and then I think in some of the other priorities, is that I don't have a good enough understanding of the regulations and like where to find the information and who has jurisdiction over the things, whether it's a city or county and things like that. So I guess that kind of threads itself through almost all the things that we're doing. But I would really appreciate like at least having a focus on that as we pick our priorities, or that has to be part of the priority research, is understanding what the rules are and who's in charge of those things, because it seems to come up over and over again, whether or not it's handed down from the state or it's a county thing, and that seemed to be increasingly important for things like when the county was the one that was administering the CARES Act funding, then it was the county that was making lots of decisions. So if there are federal dollars that come down for sustainability or for other aspects of climate change and things like that, understanding jurisdictions probably seems like an important part.
Jasmine Moore, Sustainability Director. One thought is to, with that in mind,
we could list out some of the things that you want to learn more about the rest of the year, because, to your point, if you're not quite sure what is appropriate for this board to work on or not, then you may be hesitant to elevate that as a priority. But you could identify a few topics that you want to learn more about, and then we can coordinate bringing in a speaker who can speak to those issues and get you the information that you need so that you can make a determination about if that's something that you would like to take up.
This is Jackie Carroll. I really like that idea because then we're not scratching everything that
we find interesting. I wonder, Jasmine, if it would be possible if we could pull up the list and start putting priorities into buckets, like what we might be interested in tackling this year, what we're interested in learning more about, and if there's anything that we want to drop off of the list.
This is Jasmine.
Sustainability Director. Yep, I can. I started to take some notes on the priority pitches so far, and let me just go ahead and share my screen. But just know that I can't see you anymore when I do that, so feel free to jump in when you need to.
This is Makakwa. It sounds like we have 3 items on the list on my count.
So this is Jasmine, Sustainability Director. So far I have the weatherization program, the climate action plan, and then there was talk earlier about the noxious weeds, but I haven't put it down yet. Is that something that you would like in this top priority pitches category? And if you're nodding, I can't see you, so.
This is Makakwa. It sounds like maybe right now it goes into want to learn more about. So it's something we should probably schedule some presentations around, and then maybe we can make more informed decisions at a later date.
And this is Deb Ford. I think bringing in the Parks and Rec too and seeing how a joint endeavor would facilitate that would be good.
And if we're bringing them in, that could be a really good opportunity to include the food trees idea. And that could take that off of our list and into our buckets.
I agree. I think anything related to plants could go on that, learn more about.
Yeah, the last one, urban farming sites, come up as a topic in that meeting too.
This is Makakwa. Jackie, I have a question. Would this be something where we could potentially bring back the stream buffer ordinance and review that as well?
I'm not sure. Was it? I don't know if Parks and Rec was the team that was working on that, so I don't know.
Wouldn't
I
that
believe
be stormwater? Wouldn't that be more like stormwater?
Jasmine, Sustainability Director, it was the Municipal Services Operations Department that worked on that initiative. I think for this noxious weed ordinance, there were probably several departments that it would impact, and there are possibly a couple different advisory boards that might have an interest in this too.
This is Makakwa. Jasmine, it looked like there was quite a few energy priorities on the list. Is there a way to combine all of those?
This is Jackie. There were two in particular that were very similar. One was Energy Conservation Code, and the other one was Review Codes for Maximum Sustainability Potential.
Right. This is Deb Ford. I did the Energy Conservation Code, and the current building codes are that are adopted are the most energy efficient that are out there. There are some that are in being constructed, and they're coming out shortly that we could encourage them to adopt. In the Energy Conservation Code, I listed some additional things that can be done beyond code to encourage construction to be more green, or having some smart regulations enforced, enabling solar strategy, encouraging vehicle charging stations, and then charting building performance, possibly just in public to see how the energy use is performing. So that is kind of far reaching, that you could break it into smaller nuggets. And this may be overlapping with, and probably is overlapping with, our climate action adaptation plan. So in working with that plan as it develops, we could see what could break out and make sense to enhance it.
This is Kay. Maybe we could put that in the big bucket under all of the energy things, including the weatherization, under a bucket, and we could call it however you wanted, the climate adaptation plan, action plan.
but to me, several of those things do go together, and including visibly promote the energy efficient buildings and infrastructure that the city owns and operates. I think people need to understand that the city of Lawrence is already doing some of that, and that's an education thing too.
This is Makakwa, and I guess I would, the climate action plan covers a lot of ground and includes a lot of topics under it. And it would definitely help having different sections worked on specifically by other people, and then informing the climate action plan based on that. Just because I know there's a lot of different chapters and sections of the climate action plan or an adaptation plan. And so I see, I guess that's why I envision the subcommittee structure working, is so that we can have these subcommittees that form other subcommittees or work together on different things.
And you can also break these apart into individual research items that may work for some people a little bit better, that we can come back and report. So I think we can do a little bit of what Jackie was suggesting as well.
Jasmine Moore, Sustainability Director. Another thought is that,
like you mentioned, a lot fits under the climate action plan. There may be, and there's going to be a lot of policy options that come out of that plan as well. One thing that you could consider is how much energy you want to put into the development of that plan this year. And then also, are there things that can't wait? Are there things that can't wait for the plan to be developed in order for the city of Lawrence to take action on? And two examples that you've moved forward in the last year is the 100% renewable energy goal and the elements of the Green New Deal. Those were things that you as a board said can't wait for the climate action plan to be developed. These need to be in front of the city commission now. So that's one thing that you could consider, is that that the climate action plan is going to be moving forward this year. There's going to be a lot of things that come out of that plan that will be options for you all to work on in 2022. Are there things that can't wait for that plan to be developed that need action this year?
This is Jackie. Jasmine, I remembered when the renewable energy goal was set, it had been under the premise that it would be worked into the climate action plan. The transition would be worked into the climate action plan. Is that not the plan any further? Do we need a separate group working on that?
That's still the plan. So that's energy will definitely be one component of the climate action plan, because that policy has already been discussed and decided on by the city commission. We don't have to decide what our goal is around energy, because that's the goal. And so the getting feedback and engagement on how do we get there is the piece that the engagement piece will focus on. So that's one element that has already been decided for the community through those conversations. And then the engagement piece is getting folks to the table in terms of how can we build this plan to get there. So yes, still a part of the scope.
Okay, thanks for confirming.
I've got a couple more of my priorities that I just like to voice and question is waste regulations. I know a lot of cities are going to zero waste regulations by 2050. Is the climate action plan have anything in there for waste?
Waste will likely be a part of the climate
action plan, but and I will say there are some solid waste goals that the city of Lawrence has in their solid waste management plan, but there will be a conversation around, what are we trying to do as a community around waste.
This is Ben Sykes. I would like to learn more about sustainable development and land use within the city limits and even in conjunction with the county. I don't know if that's part of the plan, the big plan that it contains lots of things, but I would like to learn more about that. The other thing is, Jasmine, you are advocating as well for things that can't wait for plans to be developed. I think that's a good way to look at it. A connected way might also be things that can be done in the meantime while the plan's being developed, like things that are tractable and might have a relatively quick effect, even if they're part of a broader plan. Is like we can start, the city can do small things in certain facets that are going to be umbrellaed under the whole plan, so that we don't have to wait to see how they fit into this grand scheme to go ahead and articulate some of those things. Maybe, some of the things that were listed in the priorities, including, I guess, the weatherization thing, sound like, and those can influence the plan as it develops, I think, right? If some of these things are done on scale.
This is Makakwa. I guess a pitch that I would make for priorities is to
we mentioned before expanding our board to include the county. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities for cooperation with the county and information sharing with the county, and then, possible support with some of our ordinances to be adopted across the county. Yeah, I think that would, that we could benefit the county, and then also that working with the county could benefit the board as well. Just my opinion, but I also, in these conversations, have seen that, some of our priority making could be better informed by working with the county.
This has been Jasmine. Do Eudora or Baldwin or any of those other cities have a sustainability advisory board that are within the county?
Jasmine Moore, Sustainability Director. No, none of the other jurisdictions within Douglas County have a Sustainability Advisory Board.
And to clarify, I think you had said this last time, but you work for the county as well if they have sustainability questions or protocols?
Correct. So I'm the Sustainability Director for the City of Lawrence and Douglas County. There is not currently a Sustainability Advisory Board at the county level, but there are other advisory boards that work on sustainability, just not a dedicated one. So, for example, the Food Policy Council is an advisory board that serves both the city and the county, and has lots of elements of sustainability within it.
This is Makakwa. Does anybody else have any feedback, input, suggestions?
This is Jackie.
Oh.
I'm noticing
Noticing that there are several related to community engagement and communication and education. The one that we have already is the one under energy that Jasmine has, the visibly promote energy efficient buildings, etc. We also have community engagement and education about how to be more sustainable and what the city is doing. And then we also have community education outreach for all sustainable practices. One that could be moved under one category. Two, while we can encourage staff and the city to move forward on that, I personally wouldn't want to work on it as a SAB goal.
One of the community members suggested that we ask for additional funds for Jasmine's group to be able to do that education.
This is, oh, sorry, Makakwa.
Oh, I was just gonna, this is Makakwa, and I think I agree with Jackie. It's not something that we should be in charge of or working on, but I definitely think that it's something that we should be pushing for, especially for the city commission to start, engaging the community on some of their decisions. However we can do that, whether that requires more funds or not, but definitely moving forward with Jasmine's group and getting them started.
Jasmine Moore, Sustainability Director, just to comment on that.
I've been talking a lot about the strategic plan over the last year. One of the elements of the strategic plan is elevating community engagement across the board for everything that the city does. So there will be some changes in how community engagement is resourced over the next years, upcoming years. So that's encouraging, and I just wanted to share that information, that is something that has been elevated as something that the city and the city commission want to improve.
Jasmine, has there been a goal set for completing the climate action plan in draft form?
Not yet. The goal was last December before we adjusted to COVID. So right now we haven't adjusted with a new end goal.
Ben, did you want to speak? I think you had something to say.
Don't give me the floor, Mike. Yeah, this is Ben Sykes. I have just two quick things. One was, Jasmine, I just read this in the paper, but the recent increases of positions that the city voted on, were any of those within the sustainability department? And then I had one other, you can answer that first.
Okay. Jasmine Moore, Sustainability Director. No, that increase did not increase the staff in our office, in the sustainability office.
And the second was to ask if there is a centralized resource or website for elements like programs, tips, resources for all citizens on energy efficiency, or the availability of weatherization grant programs, or how the city is using resources towards clean energy. Is there a centralized, is it the sustainability website that says all that stuff in one place?
Jasmine Moore, Sustainability Director. There is a section on the sustainability page that has energy efficiency, or not energy efficiency, renewable energy that has some of that information. Probably not comprehensive, but that's the one place that has most of that information.
This is Jackie. I've noticed two more things with our priority list. One is free and clean public transportation could go under our energy section. Second, I've noticed that a couple of the city or county have already taken action on. One is I see integrate sustainability into bond initiatives, green municipal bonds to support city county debt and development. The previous finance director, Brian Kidney, actually spearheaded that for Lawrence several years ago now. In 2017, the FCIP that was voted on by City Commission to do $11.3 million of building updates for energy savings and whatnot, that was financed with green bonds, I believe. So that, unless there's something additional someone would want to take on, that has been done and is in the purview of the city already. The second one I noticed was continue decreasing food waste, consider a composting program. And I know the sustainability department has that grant funded position that's doing the gleaning and the composting pilot program already. So unless there are other specific decreasing food waste items, that one is underway as well.
This is Makakwa. Jackie, under want to learn more about, I would like to include the working with tribes and tribal communities. specifically how they would like, what some of their priorities are, Haskell, some of the community members, and then what, action items that we can take or that we can, advise on as a SAB board, but it's something that would require more discussion and how we can go about that.
This is Jasmine, Sustainability Director. I just
got a note from Kira that she's not able to participate by phone, but she is able to type some things in. So I'm just going to copy and paste her comments into the chat to everyone so that you all can see, and then feel free to respond.
This is the board. One thing I would like to learn more about is clean water and water conservation practices.
Jasmine, Sustainability Director. I just want to do a time check. It's
6:54. There is another board that meets in this space at 7:30. So we have a few more minutes, but just wanted to say that whatever you would like to accomplish tonight, we probably need to move forward in the next 10 minutes or so to get some resolution. So just to circle back to what I have so far, and I wanted to check and see if this is reflective of the conversation. For the priorities that have been elevated within this conversation, there are 4. Some of these may belong together, and tell me if you want them to be combined. So the first is the weatherization program and looking at how to have influence on the rethink of what that looks like. Second is the climate action plan as a whole. Third is energy, and there's several different elements of energy under that. And the fourth is to explore expanding the scope of this board to include Douglas County. So just wanted to check in and see, would you like to make adjustments to that list?
Hi, this is Kate. I also want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the plastic bag ordinance. I don't know where that fits, but maybe we just need to make sure that that doesn't get lost. That hasn't gotten past the city commission yet.
This is Deb Ford. Is it still under study with the group, Jasmine?
Jasmine Moore, Sustainability Director. It is something that is, we're just waiting for the City Commission's direction for them to consider it. So this group doesn't need to do more on it unless the City Commission directs more feedback from this group. But it's on the City Commission's list for future agenda items, and we're just waiting for the indication from them that they're ready to discuss it.
This is Makakwa. Jackie, I want to learn more about.
I would like to put the principles of the Green New Deal on there, specifically how we can turn those into action items for the City Commission, so we can advise on those.
As far as, this is Kay again, as far as the priorities that have been discussed, to me, expanding the scope of the SAB to include Douglas County is a longer term issue. I think maybe I would rather see the energy and the food plant noxious weeds things, the energy with the climate action plan and the weatherization, those sorts of things go forward instead of adding the Douglas County right now. I think that's going to be a long-term issue that probably won't happen in the next 9 meetings. Doesn't mean there couldn't and shouldn't be some discussion. I'm just not sure that I would put that on a priority list.
This is Jackie. Kay, I agree with you in so much as I wouldn't put it on a priority list yet either. I don't know that it fits under what I want to learn more about, but I think it would be more appropriate as like an explore, exploring how everybody feels about that, and maybe inviting some people who are on joint boards, joint city county boards, to see what their experience is with that. I'm not sure if there have been any that have expanded from city to city county recently, but that perspective would be helpful too.
This is Makakwa.
I agree. It almost.
Go ahead, Deb.
I agree. I just can't wrap my head around what that means if they don't have a sustainability board within Douglas County. How do you create that link between them? So it seems like it needs to be explored or learned about versus a priority.
This is Makakwa, and yeah, maybe we can switch the noxious weed and the SAB to include Douglas County, because the noxious weed is something that I can see the board taking some action on within the next 9 meetings. At least I think so, if anybody disagrees. But I think that, being informed and being able to make a policy recommendation for the city commission is something that we can definitely do. It might require longer work, but I think that it looks like it's going to take several parts. So it might be something that we can start accomplishing this year.
This has been Sykes. I agree. I mean, I'm also really interested in expanding the scope and integrating the county personally. I think that was my #1 priority. I understand that it's a longer term thing, and I like the balance that we're starting to have with these 4 priorities, and that we have a couple like the noxious weeds and the weatherization that are maybe we can actually get real, kinds of things. And then the climate action plan, which is going and we can contribute to. And then there's so many things within the energy that there's likely to be multiple levels in terms of how long it's going to take to get those things done. But, what to learn about, I also see, I was one that also prioritized working with tribes and tribal communities. That was a big thing in Canada and in New Zealand that were integrated into almost all of the planning that people did. Those things can be stepping stones to make them priorities for the next round too, right? If we build foundations of understanding of what those things are, maybe everything, I don't know how it's worked before, but those don't necessarily have to be just learning and then they go off into the wind. They might be learning to build a foundation for how they can be action items for the next sustainability advisory board or the next year of this board.
This is Deb Ford. I agree. I think you could put the same comment that's under principles of Green New Deal, how to turn them into action.
This is Makakwa. So we should probably decide whether we vote on these tonight, whether it requires more discussion before the meeting is over. Do we feel like as a board, we're ready to vote on our priorities?
This is Jackie. I wonder if we need to pare down what's in the energy list. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 large bullet points, and then a lot of smaller bullet points under energy. I wonder if we need to pare those down first I also wanted to call out, we have discussed or touched on in some way every priority that had been on the list that Jasmine sent out. So I just wanted to call that out too.
So maybe we can vote on this tonight, and then we can get more in depth at the next meeting, then how we can start tackling these priorities. If we can come back with action items that we can suggest to the rest of the board, then we can start looking at possibilities of start advising on these, or you know, what next steps we need to take as a board. All right, so let's take a vote on these 4 priorities. Jackie?
I believe someone needs to make a motion on that.
Oh yeah, we didn't make a motion. Okay, somebody make a motion. Can I make
This
a
has
motion?
been Sykes. I don't know if you can. You can, I'll second. This has been Sykes. I move that we vote on these as our priorities for the Sustainability Advisory Board for this year.
Anyone second?
This is Kay Johnson. I second.
Okay, now we take a vote. So, Jackie, back to you.
I will say aye.
But just before you do that, just see if there's
Discussion.
Oh, sorry. Any discussion?
Okay, just really quick, I'll go either way, but I do think it would be helpful to pare down that energy section.
I would suggest we just go ahead and vote in the interest of time and then do that later.
That was my suggestion for the next meeting, is get more in depth with each priority.
That's good, because Ben has one. Sorry, this is Ben Sykes. I'm interested in what the climate action plan means, just because I'm new to the board. Like that has much less detail, whereas energy has like tons of different priorities. So that's a great idea, Makakwa.
One more thing, I totally forgot if you wanted to ask for a public comment on this item before you vote.
Do we have anybody that would like to provide public comment?
Okay, and if you do, if you could just turn your camera on or raise your hand, and we have Don Hawkins who would like to provide public comment.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a couple things. I think all these energy issues kind of fall under the climate action plan if you're trying to consolidate a little bit. But I also know that participating in the process, I don't know, Jasmine can speak to this more, but I've heard a lot of you talk about connecting with various stakeholders like the county, neighboring cities, citizens, Parks and Rec staff. So maybe an overarching, I know you're trying to wrap it up here, but I think reaching out to other stakeholders is pretty important, and how to figure out how to do that efficiently. That's all.
Thanks, Don. I do not see anyone else.
So going once, going twice, closed. Oh wait, there's someone. Okay, Maddie.
Yes, hello. I think it's really great that y'all are setting these priorities. I just want to really, I guess, encourage the board to think, like, when you're doing, like, coming up with actionable policy, think on, like, large scales. I feel like with climate stuff, it's really easy to get caught up in the small details, but we only have 10 years. You know, we're in a climate crisis. And, like, while things like a plastic bag ban could be good, or, like, focusing on designation of weeds and native plants, and, like, I really care about native plants too. I feel like those sorts of things are kind of like small scale when we need like really big solutions. And I know that in saying this, I'm not like giving you those big solutions or like giving examples, but I just really want to like encourage the board to think on a larger scale. I do activism work, and like even when we're thinking about this stuff, it's like really easy to fall into that trap of small scale stuff. So thank you for the work you're doing. Just really wanted to put that in there for like the hopefully to encourage a broad mentality. Thank you.
Thanks, Maddie. Sorry for the delay on that.
Do you see anybody else, Jasmine?
I do not.
I just want to encourage both Dawn and Maddie, please continue coming to the meetings, and definitely invite you to the next meeting as we, try to discuss each of these priorities and your ideas for action items as well that you want to see, the board work on. And give us ideas on how we can do that as well. Okay. I'm very pro-democracy. Are we ready to vote?
Hey, Makakwa, I'm curious about something you said made me wonder, do we need to vote on these tonight, or is this our list currently, and then we'll finalize it next meeting and vote on it?
Personally, I'd like to see this go forward.
Okay.
So that we at least get the top priorities down.
I would like to amend the nomination to include possible edits at the next meeting as well. So that we will vote on these as priorities, but as we pare things down, I don't want us stuck with these priorities. If we can figure out ways to combine these priorities, and then as the public comes back and comments, if there's other things that we feel like we need to focus on. So I want to leave room for editing these, but these are our guiding principles right now.
Does that modification need to be seconded? I second that modification if it does.
Well, okay, as long as we don't have, to me, these are pretty doable. And I would rather not have a new topic like water show up the next time. I mean, Climate Action Plan has a water component. I used that as an example. So I'm just saying, I think these are our big bucket items, but we could massage them. I don't have a problem with the second, as long as it's not totally something brand new.
I agree, Kay. I think it's just paring down at this point because there are so many under the energy one. For me, that would be the priority is paring down energy.
And I think that's something that we can definitely do and agree on too, Jackie. I guess I wouldn't want anybody to want to work on energy and then, be expected to work on all those things. Okay. Are we ready to vote? Okay, so we have a nomination to our motion to make these a priority for this year with room for minor edits at the next meeting as we get more information or discuss these further. We have a second by Ben. Okay, calling all board members one by one. I seconded. Oh, okay, sorry. All right, Jackie, yay or nay?
Aye.
Okay, aye, sorry, my bad. Ben, aye or nay?
Aye.
Deb?
Aye.
Kay?
Aye.
Maddie? Or sorry, who else is on here? Oh, is Kira, do we have contact with Kira?
Okay. She says yes via chat to me.
Okay, great. And then Lele.
Aye.
And then I vote aye as well. So that motion has passed. At the next meeting, we hope to discuss these further, hopefully pare some down, get some
focus on these priorities and hopefully come up with some action plans. All right.
Is there anything else that we need to discuss at tonight's meeting, Jasmine?
Jasmine Moore, Sustainability Director. The other items were the Sustainability Director report, which is included, future agenda items and member updates. So nothing more from me that I need to add. And then if there's room for public comment on anything unrelated that was not listed on the agenda.
Okay, real quickly. I think we can all read through the Sustainability Director's report on our own since it was included. Any member updates or future agenda items? Okay, any public comments on the meeting?
I don't see anyone that is giving public comment.
Okay. Does that wrap up this meeting? Anybody else got any last thoughts, words? Cat poster memes? All right, well, I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Oh wait, do we need to vote on that? Is that a motion? I need to brush up with my Robert's Rules of Order.
If we need a motion, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Makakwa, my understanding was it just kind of automatically adjourns because as soon as quorum drops off, the meeting is over anyway.
I think we still have quorum though.
I'm gonna go. Thanks, everybody. I gotta continue.
All right, so the meeting.
All right.
7:14. The meeting has been adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.